Hey YouTube, this is ThePotemkinVillager again, and I have a deck tech, this time for Modern, and I call it Izzetron. It's blue-red Tron. If you don't know what the Tron lands do, they're these three. There's Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Power Plant, and basically if you have all three of them out on the battlefield at the same time, they tap for more mana. So the goal of the deck is to produce a ton of mana and cast big threats. So we have the Tron lands to start off the mana base. Next we have an Academy Ruins. Academy Ruins allows you to put an artifact from your graveyard on top of your library an infinite number of times, or an undetermined number of times. That's what's so good about it. And there are many combos in the deck that revolve around this card. It's very strong. We also have one Tectonic Edge for land destruction. Once you have so much mana with all of your Tron lands, you don't really need all of the lands anymore, so you can afford to Tech Edge something. Also, it can be really strong to either get rid of an entire color, if that's the situation your opponent's in, or a utility land like Celestial Colonnade or something. Next we have two fetches, a Scalding Tarn and a Misty Rainforest. Optimally, the Misty Rainforest would be a Scalding Tarn, but I just have the Misty for now. But fetches are obviously very good. They allow you to thin your deck, and they're also color fixing. So we have 4 Steam Vents, which are, the Steam Vents are nice even though you have to shock in if you want them to be untapped, because you can get them with your fetch lands. We have 3 basic islands and 1 basic mountain. Basics are pretty important in Modern, especially since Path is such an important card in the format. You need to have basics to be able to search up. I'm actually thinking of going up to at least 1 more basic, because I end up running out of them sometimes. Anyway, for counterspells we have 2 Condescend. Condescend is good. It's like a Syncopate but better in my opinion. It's the Syncopate type effect. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X. But you also get a Scry too, and scrying is pretty important with this deck because you can look for other Tron pieces on top of your library and try to complete that to get extra mana. There's also 4 Remands. Remand is obviously a Modern staple. It's a 2 mana counter spell, although it returns it to your hand instead of being, returns the spell to your opponent's hand instead of being a hard counter. You do get a draw card, and a lot of the cards you're going to be countering with this are countering, a lot of the cards you're going to be countering with this are a lot worse when you know that your opponent has them. You can play around them specifically, and Remand it's good because it also just gives you information. Next we have 3 Electrolyzes. The red in this deck, as opposed to most Tron decks, blue Tron decks are just mono blue. I added red because blue is very, very light on removal. So the red allows you to have stuff like this. It can kill small creatures, like, I don't know, it could kill, like, there are a lot of good things in the format with 1 toughness right now. There's like Bob, Snapcaster, Vendilion Click, all of those you can kill with 1 side of Electrolyze. It also single-handedly takes care of things like Deathrite Shaman and stuff. And a cantrip, so it replaces itself basically. Have 1 Magma Jet. Magma Jet's, it's been pretty good. Also just because of the scry effect, as I mentioned before, scrying can be important. We have 1 Bolt, the quintessential burn spell of the format. I mean, what do you say about Bolt? It's 1 mana for 3 damage to something. Usually a creature in this deck, but yeah. Next we have 4 Thirst for Knowledge. Thirst for Knowledge is honestly one of the best cards in this deck, one of the best enablers. It allows you to dig for Tron pieces and discard like a random artifact if you need to. I mean, in this deck it's, I don't know, kind of approaching brainstorm levels in my opinion. Obviously not as good as Brainstorm, but still it's very strong. Next, we have 3 Treasure Mage. These guys allow you to search for an artifact with converted mana cost 6 or greater. So all of the bombs in your deck that you end up killing your opponent with once you have enough mana. And they're a 2/2 for 3, so that's not bad either. Next, we have 4 Expedition maps. Expedition map is nice because it's a 1 mana artifact, and which in the later game can just be used to pitch to thirst for knowledge as an artifact. But it allows you to search for any land and bring it into your hand. So any Tron piece, an Academy Ruins, Tech Edge, Fetch Land, whatever you want. And it's pretty important for assembling the Tron. Of Izzet Signets, they allow colorless mana to be converted into blue and red, which are the colors of the deck. So if all you have are colorless lands, because there are 14 colorless lands in the deck, you can have this out and you'll still be able to get your colors. We have 2 Oblivion Stones next. Oblivion Stone is this deck's version of a board wipe. It's really nice because it hits all non-land permanents, and if you have an extra turn with it, like an extra turn where they're not putting pressure on you, you can put a fate counter on your best permanent. And so when you sack the Oblivion Stone, it destroys everything without a fate counter. So you can keep your best thing and wipe their board. It's very strong like that. And you can also recur it with Academy Ruins and just keep them locked down. Next, we have Solemn Simulacrum. Sad robot, as some people know it. At least the new art. But anyway, Solemn Simulacrum is just very strong utility. It allows you to get a land, or allows you to get a basic land tapped when it enters play. And when it dies, you can draw a card. It's a little bit like Thragtusk in that respect, where when you play it, you get value out of it, and when it dies, you also get value out of it. So even if they kill it immediately, it's not bad for you. All you lost was a 2/2. Yeah, so now we're getting into some of the bombs, the win conditions. I have 2 Mineslavers. Mineslaver is not really the kind of thing you'd find in the average deck, but in here it actually works really well. Once you get up to a bunch of mana with your Tron pieces, specifically 12, what you can do, 12 or 13 actually, but you can use your Academy Ruins. You can play your Mineslaver, sack it to control their turn, then use your Academy Ruins to put it on top of your library before your draw step, so you can draw it again and just infinitely lock them with Mineslavers. So it's basically infinite turns, and they're completely shut out of the game until you either draw into some of their removal spells, which you can cast on their creatures, or you get like so much, or if you have extra mana, you can draw into some of your removal spells. Next, we have 2 Wurmcoil Engines. Wurmcoil Engines, if you can see, it's a 6/6 for 6 with Death Touch and Lifelink, which is strong by itself, but when it dies, you get a 3/3 token with Death Touch and a 3/3 token with Lifelink. So you also get value when it dies. So it's a good synergy with Oblivion Stone, because if you have to pop your Oblivion Stone immediately, it kills all their stuff, but your Wurmcoil just splits into 2 halves, and you still have creatures. It is a little bit... Wurmcoil still falls to Path without getting the tokens, but a lot of things fall to Path. It just has to be something you're either going to play around or be prepared to take. Next is Karn. Well, Karn is a boss by himself, basically. For 7, he starts with 6 loyalty. He has a +4, target player exile the card from his or her hand. His -3 is exile target permanent, so Vindicate but better, essentially. And his -14, I've never actually done it, but you restart the game, and you get to start with all the stuff exiled by Karn on your side of the battlefield. So, He's very strong. Most of the time you're not going to be doing that. You're going to be, probably when you first cast him, you're going to be vindicating something with his -3. Then build his loyalty back up with his +4, which obviously happens pretty quickly. And he just really controls the game once he hits the table. Lastly, we have Sundering Titan. He's an 8-drop, 7/10. When he enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, you choose a land of every basic land type and destroy those. What that means is, like, every basic land type that's on the battlefield, every basic land type among lands that's on the battlefield gets destroyed. Sometimes it hits your lands. Most of the time it hits your opponent's lands. I was playing against blue-white-red control the other day and played him and killed 3 of his lands, which basically left him with nothing without killing any of mine. So he's really strong, especially against decks that share the same colors as yours, and against those 5-color Tribal Flames decks that you see running around, which it basically hits 5 of their lands most of the time. So yeah, that is the main deck right here. And next I'll go over the sideboard. Okay, here's the sideboard. Firstly, we have another Worm Coil engine in the board. He's pretty good in the matchups where you're gonna need extra life, like most of the time against Zoo or anything like that, Burn and whatnot. If you can get him out, he can really help you with that. And yeah, it's just another big body that some decks just can't deal with. Next we have 3 Spell Skites. Spell Skites are good against mainly control, blue-white and blue-white-red control. They do a nice job of just eating bolts. Oh yeah, also Burn, because they do a nice job of eating bolts. They can redirect path to exiles away from your other creatures like Worm Coil Engine. And also, you can board them in against Zoo, because they're just good blockers. They're 0/4s, which honestly blocks most of their creatures. But yeah, he's a modern staple, as many of you may know. Just a very solid card. Next we have 2 Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce goes in against control, and it's just for a 1-mana counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2, which is mostly just counter the non-creature spell for 1. It can be something they don't expect, because like if they don't know to play around it specifically, then you can really blow them out with it most of the time. It can also counter planeswalkers and everything, which is a plus. Next we have 2 Relic of Progenitus. This also goes in against control, because Snapcaster is such a huge thing with them. It just completely turns off their Snapcasters. Also, against Jund, or most of those other decks especially, it turns off their Deathrite Shamans and their Tarmogoyfs. Makes their Tarmogoyf 0/1s, or it can just keep them in check. So it's also pretty strong, because when you crack it, you can draw a card, which is nice. Next we have 4 Pyroclasm. Another reason I wanted to add red to this deck. This deck has a lot of trouble with swarm decks. I don't know, Boros, Zoo in particular. Pyroclasm does a nice job dealing with these. Although it doesn't hit Loam Lions or Curd Apes, it still gets a lot of other threats, like Geist of St. Traft and whatnot. Step Links, Plated Geopede, Deathrite Shaman. It's also pretty strong. And lastly, we have 3 Dismembers. Dismember, a lot of people would, at first glance, would be like, what is a black card doing in here? But this is a black card that is present in many blue decks because of its mana cost, Phyrexian mana. You can pay 4 life instead of the 2 black, which is most of the time worth it because you get a big threat off their board, which would end up doing you more than 4 over time anyway. This also goes in, like against kind of creature heavy decks, I guess. Maybe against merfolk, because those can get out of hand really quickly and stuff like that. So there's the sideboard, and yeah, that's the Izzetron deck for Modern, or my first Modern deck. And I mean, I don't know the most about Modern, but I still hope you enjoyed. Yeah, if you liked the video, just leave a like, maybe sub, that'd be great, I really appreciate it. And thanks, see you next time.